Think back to February 21st, 2001. Can you remember what you were doing?
Oh, wow, 2001.
It's a while back now. Now imagine
Yeah.
waking up the next day and hearing that someone you loved had been murdered.
Oh,
And then, 20 years later, the case was still unsolved.
wow.
That's the reality for the families of Deborah Gomez and Alfonso McCoy Jr.
Mm-hmm.
They were found shot to death in their home in Phoenix, Arizona, on that very day, February 21st, 2001.
Oh, my gosh.
We're going to be diving deep into this cold case today, examining the evidence, the different theories, and the ongoing search for answers.
Yeah, it's a case that seemed really straightforward at first,
Okay.
but then it quickly just unraveled
Really?
into this, tangled web of possibilities.
So let's start with that day.
Okay.
Debbie's son, Raymond, went to his mom's house to check on her.
Mm-hmm.
And what he found, it would haunt him forever.
I can only imagine.
Can you imagine walking into your mother's home
Yeah.
and finding the dog inside?
Right.
And the dog's typically an outdoor dog.
Right.
There's a broken window.
Mm.
The back door's wide open.
Oh, wow.
And there are important papers just scattered all over the hallway.
Like someone had been searching for something.
Yeah.
Frantically.
And then, the most chilling discovery of all, his mother and her boyfriend, lifeless in their bed.
It's a horrible image.
It really is. And it immediately makes you think something terrible happened.
Yeah, you would think murder-suicide.
Right?
But when you look closer, there are all these inconsistencies.
Like what?
Well, there were 3 bullet holes,
Okay.
but the police only found 2 shell casings, and their families insisted that Debbie and Alfonso had no history of violence.
So it just doesn't add up.
No. These inconsistencies, along with the signs of forced entry, the potential ransacking,
Right.
it all pointed to something much more complex.
So the investigators started looking for other motives and other suspects.
Yeah.
The first suspect to emerge was Debbie's ex-boyfriend, Henry.
Oh.
And Henry had a history of violence. And he had also recently been released from prison.
Okay.
And there were conflicting reports about whether he and Debbie had rekindled their relationship at the time of the murders.
So we don't know if they were back together.
Right. Some sources say they had reconnected. Others say they hadn't.
Huh. That's a pretty crucial detail.
It really is. I mean, that could really change whether he's a serious suspect.
Yeah.
And to make things even more complicated, Raymond said he saw Henry's car near his mother's house around the time of the murders.
Oh, wow.
But Henry cooperated with the investigation. He said he had nothing to do with it.
Okay.
And ultimately, there wasn't enough evidence to connect him to the murders.
So we have a suspect with a past, maybe a connection,
Right.
but no proof.
Right. It's really confusing.
Yeah, a lot of questions.
Yeah, it is. And as investigators dug deeper, another theory emerged. This one centered around a potential dispute over Debbie's late mother's will.
Oh, will?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So Debbie inherited her mother's house, and there were these conflicting accounts about the will itself and how a family friend named Gail was involved. She was hoping to manage the estate.
Oh, so this is about money.
Yeah. A possible financial motive.
Right. Which always makes you look twice.
It does. But the details surrounding the will
Right.
and Gail's role, they remain a mystery.
So another layer of mystery.
It is.
Oh.
It really is.
Yeah.
And speaking of mystery, the third theory surrounding this case, it's maybe the most compelling.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
It involves Debbie's son, Raymond.
Now Raymond. Oh, okay.
Yeah. So investigators started exploring the idea that maybe Debbie had given information to the police about a shooting. That involved one of Raymond's friends, a young man named Victor.
Okay.
That tip led to Victor's arrest.
So he's in prison. So is the theory that Victor wanted revenge
That's what they're thinking.
on Debbie
Yeah,
for giving the police information?
exactly. And to make things even more suspicious, Raymond's statements to the police, they were inconsistent, to say the least.
Oh, so.
Well, at first, he said he didn't even own a gun
Okay.
and that he hadn't been to his mother's house on the day of the murders. But then later, he admitted to both.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So he lied to the police.
It seems that way.
Why would he do that?
That's the question. I mean, was he trying to protect himself?
Right.
Or was there something more he was hiding?
That's a big twist. It makes you wonder about everything we thought we knew about the case.
It really does.
So where does Raymond fit in all of this?
Well, he claims he was only near his mother's house that day because he was doing a drug deal.
A drug deal.
Yeah. And that he never went inside.
Okay.
But with his story changing
Right.
and his connection to Victor, He became a key part of the investigation.
That makes sense. So what about Victor? Did they talk to him?
They tried, but he wouldn't cooperate while he was in prison.
So another dead end.
It is.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating for everyone involved, especially for Debbie and Alfonso's families.
Of course.
I mean, they want answers.
They deserve answers.
They do. Can you imagine knowing that someone out there knows what happened to your loved ones,
Yeah.
but they refuse to say anything?
It would be awful
Wow.
to be left with all these unanswered questions.
It's heartbreaking.
Sure.
And, you know, the reporting team behind this deep dive, they reached out to Debbie's adult children, Jenna and Raymond,
Oh, wow.
to get their perspective.
Okay.
But they chose not to respond.
Really?
Yeah. It's hard to say why,
Right.
but it really shows you just how personal and painful these investigations are.
Yeah.
For years, the case stayed cold. There were very few leads, even fewer answers.
Mm-hmm.
But in recent years, there's been a new effort to revisit the case because of advancements in technology.
Oh, that's interesting. Like what kind of technology?
Well, DNA analysis has come a long way since 2001.
Oh, yeah.
They collected evidence back then,
Hmm.
but they might not have been able to get conclusive results.
Right.
But that's where the hope comes in.
Okay.
They found a wooden dowel outside the broken window,
Okay.
and they tested it for DNA back in 2010.
Mm-hmm.
But they're submitting it again
Oh, okay.
using these newer techniques.
Interesting.
So back then, they couldn't separate the DNA profiles that they found on the dowel.
Okay.
But with the new technology,
Mm-hmm.
there's a chance they can isolate those profiles.
Right.
And maybe even identify the person who broke into the house.
So this could be huge.
It could. It's definitely a long shot,
Right.
but it's a shot. And for Debbie and Alfonso's families, that's enough.
Yeah. I mean, any progress is good.
It is. It really is.
So they haven't given up hope.
No. And it really shows the dedication of law enforcement
Mm-hmm.
and the power of perseverance. I mean, even after all these years, they're still pursuing justice.
It's inspiring.
It is. The detective leading the investigation now, Detective Nunley, he seems determined to find out the truth, no matter how long it takes.
Wow. That says a lot about him.
It really does. It gives you hope, right?
Definitely.
Knowing there are people like him out there,
Mm-hmm.
fighting for those who can no longer fight for themselves.
That's powerful. And it makes you think we should never give up on these cases.
That's right. Who knows what new breakthroughs are coming, with all the technology coming out all the time.
Exactly.
So we've talked about the chilling discovery,
Yeah.
those inconsistencies that ruled out a murder-suicide,
Mm-hmm.
and the different theories about what happened.
Yeah.
We've talked about how this tragedy has affected everyone involved,
All right.
especially the families.
Of course.
And we've talked about the new hope.
Yeah.
That comes with advancements in DNA technology.
It's amazing how far that's come.
It really is. We're waiting to hear the results of the new analysis. It could change everything.
Wow.
But even if it doesn't give us a definitive answer,
Right.
it could still give us important information. Maybe rule out some suspects.
Oh.
Maybe uncover some new leads.
It's still important.
Yeah, for sure. That's why if anyone has any information about this case,
Mm-hmm.
no matter how small it seems,
Right.
they should contact Silent Witness or Detective Nunley.
Okay.
Even the smallest detail could be the missing piece of the puzzle
That's so true.
and help bring justice to Debbie and Alfonso's families.
I hope they get the answers they deserve.
He makes you think,
Yeah.
what if this were your family?
Right.
Wouldn't you want someone fighting for answers?
Absolutely. No matter how much time had passed.
We need to keep these stories alive, to remind people that these cases aren't just files.
Yeah.
They're about real people.
Real families whose lives have been changed forever.
Exactly.
It's a lot to think about.
It is.
It makes you realize how precious life is.
That's for sure. And that we should cherish our loved ones every single day.
It also reminds you about the secrets people keep and how complicated relationships can be.
Yeah, we saw that with the conflicting accounts from family and friends,
Right.
and with Raymond changing his story.
It just makes it so hard to know the truth.
It really does.
And sometimes, despite everyone's best efforts,
Yeah.
cases just go unsolved.
And that leaves the families in this horrible limbo.
It's just not fair.
It's not. But this case shows us
Yeah.
that even cold cases can be solved.
Right. With advancements in technology.
And dedicated people like Detective Nunley.
Exactly. Never give up hope.
That's a great message. And for our listeners, if this deep dive has made you interested in true crime, you can help. If you have any information about this case,
Sure.
even something that seems unimportant,
Right.
You can contact Silent Witness or Detective Nunley.
I'll look up their information.
Yeah, you can find their contact info in our show notes.
Great.
Your tip could be the one that finally brings closure to this case.
That would be amazing.
It would. This has been quite a journey.
It has.
A complex and heartbreaking story.
It's also a story about hope and the pursuit of the truth.
It makes you wonder about the mysteries of this case.
Yeah.
And hope that one day, justice will be served for Deborah and Alfonso.
I really hope so.
Yeah. It's a crazy twist. It makes you think about everything we thought we knew.
It really does. I mean, where does Raymond fit into all of this?
Well, he says he was only near his mother's house that day to do a drug deal.
A drug deal.
Yeah. And he says he never even went inside.
Okay.
But because he changed his story.
Right.
And because of his connection to Victor,
Hmm.
he kind of became a key part of the investigation.
Yeah, I can see why. What about Victor? Did they ever talk to him?
They tried. He wouldn't cooperate.
So that's another dead end.
Pretty much.
Right.
So frustrating, you know?
Oh, I can only imagine. Especially for Debbie and Alfonso's families.
It's just heartbreaking. Imagine knowing that someone knows exactly what happened to your loved ones.
Yeah.
They won't say anything.
I can't even imagine. To have all these unanswered questions.
The reporting team behind this deep dive, they actually reached out to Debbie's adult children, Jenna and Raymond,
Oh, wow.
to get their perspective on things,
Okay.
but they didn't respond.
That's interesting.
It's hard to know why, really.
Yeah.
It shows you just how painful and personal all this is.
Right.
For years, nothing happened.
So the case just went cold.
Yeah, for years.
Yeah.
Very few leads,
Mm-hmm.
hardly any answers.
Tough.
But recently, they've started to look at it again
Oh, really?
because of advancements in technology,
That makes sense. What kind of technology?
DNA analysis.
Oh, yeah. It's come a long way since 2001.
Big time. They collected evidence back then,
Mm-hmm.
but they probably couldn't get any conclusive results.
Right.
But now
Yeah.
there's hope.
Okay.
So there was this wooden dowel.
Okay.
They found it outside the broken window,
Okay.
and they tested it for DNA back in 2010.
Right.
But they're going to test it again
Oh, wow.
using these new techniques.
Interesting.
Back then, they couldn't separate the DNA profiles,
Okay.
the ones they found on the dowel.
Right.
But with the new technology,
Uh-huh.
they might be able to isolate them.
Okay.
And maybe, just maybe, they can identify whoever broke into the house.
Wow. That's incredible. So this could be huge.
It really could. It's a long shot, obviously,
Yeah.
but it's a shot. And for Debbie and Alfonso's families,
Mm-hmm.
any progress is a good thing.
I can understand that. They must be so relieved. They haven't given up hope.
Not at all. It shows how dedicated law enforcement can be,
Yeah.
that they're still fighting for justice after all these years.
It's amazing.
The detective leading the investigation now, Detective Nunley, he's determined to find out what happened.
Wow. Good for him. That says a lot about him.
It does. It gives you hope, doesn't it?
Absolutely, that there are people like that out there.
Yeah. Fighting for people who can't fight for themselves.
That's really powerful. It makes me think we should never give up on these cases.
That's right. With technology changing all the time.
Exactly. Who knows what's next?
All right, so we've talked about the chilling discovery, the inconsistencies that ruled out a murder-suicide, and the various theories.
Mm-hmm.
We've also touched on the impact this tragedy has had on those involved, especially the families left behind.
Right.
And we've explored the renewed hope that advancements in DNA technology have brought to the investigation. It's a waiting game now, as the results of the new DNA analysis could potentially crack the case wide open.
Right.
But even if those results don't lead to a definitive answer,
Yeah.
they could still provide valuable information,
Okay.
maybe ruling out suspects or uncovering new leads for investigators to pursue.
So it's still important.
Yeah, for sure. And that's why if anyone has any information about this case, no matter how small it seems,
Right.
they should contact Silent Witness or Detective Nunley. Even the smallest detail could be the missing piece of the puzzle that helps bring justice to Debbie and Alfonso's families.
That's so true.
Makes you think, doesn't it?
It really does.
What if this was your family?
Yeah.
Wouldn't you want someone out there still searching for answers?
Oh, absolutely. No matter how much time had gone by.
That's why we have to keep telling these stories.
Mm-hmm.
These cases, they're not just files in a cabinet somewhere.
Right.
They're about real people.
Real lives lost. Families changed forever.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the murders of Deborah Gomez and Alfonso McCoy Jr., what are the big takeaways here?
Well, first of all, it reminds us that tragedy can happen to anyone,
Yeah.
even in what seems like an ordinary life.
It also shows us just how complex relationships can be, all the secrets people keep.
Yeah. I mean, we saw that with all the conflicting stories from family and friends. And Raymond changing his story, too.
And sometimes, even with everyone doing their best,
Yeah.
the cases just don't get solved.
And the families are just left in limbo.
It's not right. But this case, it shows us that even cold cases, they can be solved.
Right. Especially with all the new technology.
And with dedicated people like Detective Nunley.
Exactly.
So if you're listening and you have any information about this case, even if it doesn't seem important,
Right.
please contact Silent Witness or Detective Nunley.
You can find their contact info in the show notes, right?
That's right. Your tip could be the one that finally brings closure to this case.
That would be incredible.
This deep dive, it's been a tough one. A complex story, a heartbreaking story. But it's also a story about resilience, about hope, and about the search for truth.
It really makes you think.
We hope that one day justice will be served for Deborah and Alfonso.
I hope so, too.